Hello, welcome to Tip Tuesday. My name is Adam Wamer. I am the COO here at IndySoft. And today I want to give some quick tips on data integrity. IndySoft has a lot of powerful tools to make sure that your data is accurate and clean and proper and that your users aren't entering anything that they shouldn't. But I'm going to focus really on the profile manager options today around updating equipment fields. We'll do a little bit of side conversation around that as well because there are lots of things to talk about. But again, the focus is primarily just going to be on editing and controlling what happens in equipment fields. So to get started, let's take a quick step over to the equipment view and talk about how a lot of these fields are built out. You'll notice on these fields that there's drop downs. That means that it is looking at a list of things. I can freeform type anything I want in there, but there are rules that say, can this person add it to the list? Should this person be able to do anything else? It all varies. It's important to remember that there are sort of three primary rules of security when entering something in one of those fields. Are we blocking someone from doing something? Are we requiring someone to enter something? And then on top of it, validating against something. So it's also important to remember that everyone can have different rules depending on their roles. An administrator is going to have different permissions than a standard technician. So we're going to walk through some of that, look at some examples, primarily playing with the manufacturer field just because that's really easy to do. But I also want to touch base on other levels of controlling this. So let's take one step back before we dig into those rules. So I'm editing information here at the equipment. But we also want to remember that we have template level controls as well. If this asset was made from a template, I would want to have the template control that type of information. We don't need to enter information over and over and over again for something that is commonly repeatable. And that's what templates do. So the same rules that I'm going to refer to on the equipment field and I'm going to modify apply at the template level as well. I can block someone from entering something at the template level. I can require someone to enter something at the template level. And I also have controls over validating what they put at the template level. But again, any control that happens here pushes down to the equipment, and that overwrites everything on the screen there you see for equipment view. All right, so let's go into Profile Manager really quick and talk about, we'll come back to that screen in a second. Let's talk about those, what I just mentioned, the blocking, requiring, and validating. So I'm in Profile Manager here. I'm going to pull up Manufacturer because that's the field we're working with right now. If I could type you know what, that'll do it. And so you'll notice here we have blocking access to equipment and template. Like I mentioned, there's two levels to that. Require equipment and template and validating. Blocking is pretty self-explanatory. The user cannot touch this. And of course, if it's controlled from a template, it's going to be blocked at the equipment level by default if you have it linked properly. Requiring, very similar as well. Make sure that we have a manufacturer or whatever field you're working with selected. And then from there, validating. So there's a couple questions there. Let's scroll down. So validate against selection list. This means your add edit list, the true list of what these fields should be. I want to make sure that the person pulls from that list. Then automatically add all new manufacturers to selection list. Do I want to give this person control to, as they're typing on the equipment view, add everything to the add edit list, and then prompt user before auto adding new manufacturers? Do I want to see that pop up that briefly showed up on the screen a second ago? And just again, real quick, let's come over here and we'll save the modifications to equipment and look at the add edit list just for reference so that you understand where this is being stored. So you'll probably note from a second ago when I was typing in that manufacturer field, I only had one drop down, which is Minatoya. If I had said yes to the gibberish I typed, you would now see that gibberish in this list. So that's a good example of if we gave a regular technician power to enter whatever they wanted to in that list, we would probably not have data integrity. We'd have Mitatoya, Yodomidu, all sorts of typo errors that just aren't the proper list. And for manufacturers, that's connected to your model number as well, because that's a child table. So if someone's entering a bunch of information inaccurately at the manufacturer level, we're going to have bad model number information. So let's go through an example real quick of how I would probably suggest setting this up. I'm a system administrator right now, but I'm worried about what my technicians are doing. So I'm going to come here to a standard user, still maintaining my search from above and Number one, let's expand this so we can see the checkboxes we choose a little bit better. So I still want them to be able to edit the manufacturer in this scenario. Probably don't the majority of the time, but I'm going to make sure that they can, that they aren't fully blocked from it, so we can look at what happens when we do the validating. All right, so right now I have it set up to validate against selection list. I love that. And I also want to turn off the prompt user before auto adding new manufacturers, because all I want them to do is be able to change that manufacturer from the list that we have already decided is the valid list. So I'm going to pause for a second, get logged in as this other user that I have as a power user, or excuse me, as a technician, and we will show what that looks like for comparison. All right, so now we're logged in as a standard user. I'm treating myself as a technician. I'm going to show how those security settings I had set up work. You'll note the manufacturer field is editable because it's not blocked. But all we said we could do was validate against the list. So I'm going to type in Mid-Toyo, just like someone in a rush would. And now I get a prompt, not a valid manufacturer. Hit OK. As a user, as a technician, I am set up to where all I can do is validate against the list. I can save my changes and it retains. That gives them complete control, or gives you, as the system admin, control over what's happening on every field. I know I'm referencing manufacturing. That's probably the simplest field that you can have, but it's across the board. It's your user defined lists. It's every sort of equipment field in general. You can pretty much say, what am I doing with this and who has control over it? And that's the power of IndySoft. And while I'm talking about equipment fields, this is also true at the event level as well. So if you go into workflow configuration, matter of fact, we can just do it from profile manager as well. Let's just do user defined. And you'll note that we've got event settings in here for every single event. I can control those fields the exact same way, and the concept's still true. Do I block access to the field? Do I require this field? Do I validate? And how does that prompt work if we allow them to type anything with automatically allowed to exist? Those rules are all the same. Same way it worked at the equipment level is the same way it worked at the event level. So again, there are many more options than what I'm discussing here, especially even when it comes up to cleaning up your ad edit list. If this inspires you to say, shoot, I should have had these settings in place from the beginning for certain users, and I know my lists are not the best, inside our ad edit list, we've got validation that can take place when you delete and remove that'll update the corresponding records. I think we've got some other Tip Tuesdays available on that. I would check that out. It's probably continuing education on what you can do with data integrity in IndySoft. Again, I just wanted to give a focus on what some of these settings are, how it applies per user, the concept of blocking, the concept of requiring, the concept of validating, and making sure you had a good base to start. If this is something you haven't taken advantage of before, it can feel a little daunting. Don't hesitate to reach out to support. We're happy to give some guidance on this of best practices and other things you can do. Thanks again for watching Tip Tuesday, and have a great one.